Okay, so I have my 100 by 100 millimeter canvas open, and I'm going to go ahead and come over here to the pen tool, and I want to left click on this dark pink and shift left click on the black. And you can't see these colors here, but you can see them up here in this top right hand corner near the snapping tool. And I do want to have snapping selected at the moment. So the first thing that I want to do is find my center point around 50 millimeters, and I want to just draw a line in the middle, anywhere in the middle. You can see that I have a black line. And we're going to come to our path effects, which is under path effects, and then opens this panel. And then there's this drop down right here that you can select, and I'm going to go to Mirror Symmetry. And from there I'm going to select my node tool, and I'm going to come over here to my path and I'm going to stretch it out. You can see that you kind of start to get the heart shape already. We need to, with our node tool, double click on this corner. That will bring up our handles that we can adjust. I like to also change this path to symmetrical. Then I can move them together. And you can see that when I select this node here, it moves my mirror line. So I can just move that out of the way and then adjust this. And I probably want to turn my snapping off at this point so I can adjust my heart shape. You need your snapping on to adjust this line, but then you need to turn it off to adjust this node here. You can see that we're kind of getting a heart shape, and I would just worry about the heart shape at first, and then you can worry about sizing it. So I kind of like that shape right there. So you'll notice if you have this path selected on your mirror symmetry, you can select this button here that says Fuse Opposite Sides. So if there's any gaps there, it will remove those and fuse these two sides together. You can kind of adjust that. And I like that I can see what's happening over here without the nodes selected by looking at this side. So I'm going to go ahead and flatten this, which is going to just create one shape. I'm going to go to this drop down menu on our mirror symmetry live path effect and select flatten. And now it's just a regular shape. So if I select on my node tool now, you'll see I have nodes that mirror the other node that we originally added. Okay, so now I can kind of adjust the size of my heart, and I'm going to do that. First thing I want to do is I like the earring size to be a maximum of 3 inches. You want your heart shape, your lace shape, to be large enough that you can put some fairly complicated designs on it, but you also want it to be a comfortable earring size. I like larger earrings, so 3 inches works for me, but you can do a smaller version of it, but you're not going to be able to do necessarily as much fine detail or have this sort of satin effect of having thicker satin stitches on there. So the first thing I'm going to do to change the size is adjust my ruler up here to be in inches, and you right click on this ruler and select inches, and then I'm going to make my width 3 inches. And that's going to be the size that we want to start off working with. What we want to do is create a duplicate of this heart. So I'm going to Command D, and I'm going to come over here to my layer panel, and I'm going to hide one of my layers, the one that's on top. And I'm going to come and adjust my bottom layer. If you can't see your layer panel, it's under Layer, Layers and Objects. And you hide that other path by selecting this eye right here. So with this bottom path selected, I'm going to create my base grid for my lace. And so I'm going to shift click on this X because we don't actually want a stroke around it. We just want to work on the fill part of it. So I'm going to go Command Shift P to go to my params. And I'm going to go look at my grid, and you can see that's pretty much just a regular fill. So that's probably too heavy-handed to look like lace. So the first thing you want to do is come to your fill underlay, and you want to remove this underpath because that's what those lines are that you're seeing. And you want your row spacing to be probably about 1 millimeter. Then you want to go to the fill stitch and do the same thing. Remove the underpath, and you want your spacing between rows to be 1 millimeter. And that's going to create the grid that we're going to build our lace on. So you can hit Apply and Quit. And at this point I would probably save. And so I'll go ahead and do that. So now that that's complete, we can hide that layer and come to our other layer, which still has the black stroke. So make sure you have your part selected. And we're going to left click on this X because we do not want a fill. We just want the outline to work on this part. And you can now change that to be the same color or deep rose. We just wanted to distinguish the stroke from the fill. We want to take this stroke now and we want to make it thicker. So I'm going to right click on my stroke right here, and I'm going to select 3 millimeter. And you can see that creates a much thicker line around our heart. And this is going to be our final layer. So you can go ahead and lock that for now. Now we're going to work on our spiral designs that go inside of our heart. And you can come over here and select your spiral tool. And you're going to want to look at how many turns and this divergence button. It's in the backspace, so it goes to the default. So if you select this back button on any of your modifications to your tools, it'll go back to the default. If I drag out a spiral, you can see that's probably too many turns. So you can then limit that by coming out this way using your node selector tool, or you can make it smaller this way. Actually, you can stay in your spiral tool to do that as well. So I'm going to say about right there, and they can vary. You know, you can have different divergence for each swirl if you'd like, but I'm going to make that my size that I start off with. And I'm gonna, change the color. Shift left click on your dark pink, and then I'm gonna change the thickness to 3 millimeters. And then I need my fill and stroke menu open over here, and you can find that by going to Object, Fill and Stroke. And I'm going to come to the Stroke Style tab. Line selected, I like this rounded cap, and I don't think you have to select rounded join because spirals don't really have a join, but you can select that just in case. And then now you can see we have this nice bubbling effect at the end of our spiral. And now what you want to do is just kind of resize this to be the size and direction. If you double click, you can rotate it. Sometimes it's easier to rotate, sometimes it's easier to kind of change the spiral by using the spiral tool and readjusting your spiral shape. Command D, and then I'm going to take that line and I'm going to flip it horizontally, which you can select H to do. And I'm just going to eyeball it. It doesn't have to be perfect. Just keep filling this in and just doing it by eye and kind of seeing how I feel about it as I go along. And you'll notice the spiral starts from the middle. So you're going to want to kind of start from the middle of where you would want the spiral to be. One thing I do recommend is that think about that you want your spirals touching the edges and touching each other as much as possible, because that is what connects them. So let me change this to 3 millimeter and shift click my pink, change my end cap, and you want these kind of to overlap. So that's how the machine kind of stitches those together and they become connected. So I might, this one, make it more narrow. And then Command D, select H, or you can select this tool up here, flip horizontal. I'm going to mirror that right there. Okay, so now I'm going to add a path here and here, and those are not going to be able to be mirrored, but I am going to try to make them the opposite direction so I don't have too much repetition. Okay, so I think that's pretty good. I'm going to leave it like that. Select all my swirls, and I'm going to go path, object to path. Now you can see those are just regular nodes, and we can no longer adjust the ends of them. So I'm going to select those paths, and I'm going to go to Extensions, Inkstitch, Satin, Convert Line to Satin. And you can see it converted all of these to our satin shapes. Just like I want to auto route these satin stitches. So I'm going to select them all, and I'm going to go to Extensions, Inkstitch, satin, auto route satin columns. It's going to give me some options. I can trim my jump stitches and I can preserve the order of the satin columns. I'm going to uncheck. I don't really need it to preserve the order. And I'll go ahead and trim my jump stitches. And you can see it just has this one trim at the end. So I'm going to hit close, and we're going to see what this looks like under params. So I'm going to go extension, Inkstitch, params, and that's going to show us what it looks like. And keep in mind, it's not showing us the running stitches because it's showing you that you will not, what you will not see by not showing you the running stitches. So when I go to jump, however, you'll notice that you see all these jumps here. I think there is a disconnect with params and with the auto routing, where it's still thinking that it's going to jump from one point to the other. Because it's not showing you the running stitches, it thinks that it has to jump. So let me show you what this looks like whenever I do my stitch plan preview. So I'm going to go Command Shift greater than or period, Command Shift period. And you can see that even though I rendered my jump stitches, you can't see my jump stitches. You might see a couple of little running stitches in here, but that's not going to be very noticeable. So those jump stitches will actually not show up in your final project, and I have tested it and I don't see really any jump stitches. Just so you know, that did work. We just have this one trim here. And if this trim icon bothers you, you don't want to see it, you can go to Extensions, Inkstitch, Commands, View, and Display or Hide your object commands. And we're going to go ahead and now work on our other path here. So all our auto-routed stitches are in a folder, and we want those to stitch just on top of our grid. So I can rename this my grid. It's hidden right now. And then I have my auto-routed swirls. And then I'm going to have this satin stitch that goes all around the top. And it kind of locks in these ends of our satin stitching and attaches all of our grid stitches as well. So I'm going to lock my auto-routed stitches, and I'm going to work on this. I'll call this satin outline. And one thing that you should note is that these are separated. I think we didn't fuse these whenever we were creating them in the mirror symmetry. So I need to select those 2 points, and I need to do this button that says Join Selected Nodes. And then do the same with this bottom one. And so now we have one line, and you can see the direction is going now around our heart. So I'm going to go ahead and convert that to satin stitch now by going to Extension, Inkstitch, Satin, Convert Line to Satin. And now we have our outline. If I had not connected those, it would have come to an abrupt edge here, and it wouldn't have had this nice bend in the satin stitch at these 2 sharp points here. So I'm going to do Command Shift P so you can see that stitch out as one continuous line. So I'm going to go ahead and you can apply and quit. Okay, so I need to rename that because whenever I did my satin stitch, it didn't retain the name that I had for it. So I'm going to do satin outline. And then what I need to do is create my little loop that is my sort of eyelet connection piece. So I'm going to come over here and select the circle. I'm just going to draw about 1 centimeter in length oval shape. And then I'm going to select my node tool, and I can select this button here that says Object to Path. And you can see now I have my regular nodes. What I want to do is select this bottom node and press this, so your corner node tool, select that twice, and then you can see it just comes to a point. And with these two nodes on the side, I like to delete them. And this top node, I like to make it symmetrical. So now I can kind of just widen it and see how I want it to be. That looks pretty good. So one more thing I need to do is select this bottom node, and I want to open it because I want to make sure that my starting and ending point are right here. Because we're going to put this on the bottom, and this is going to stitch on top of it, this outline. And that's what's going to secure the connection piece to the rest of our heart. Because if your start and end point is up here at the top, then you will have it it'll just break apart whenever you put it in water and remove your water soluble stabilizer. It'll just come apart. Deselect, reselect. And you want to press this button here that says Break Path at Selected Node. And then you can see that it's broken. So now your starting and ending point will be right there. And you can put this to the bottom and place it where you'd like it to be. Then go to Extensions, Inkstitch, Satin, Convert Line to Satin. And you can see that that is at the very bottom below our grid even. So I'm going to rename that connector. So now we have everything in the right order. We have our connector, our grid, our auto-routed swirls, and our satin outline. And I'm going to go ahead and save it. Okay, so I do need to add one more thing before finalizing, and that is our underlay, which is going to give the satin stitches a lot more stability. So if you select all these satin stitches, just leave your grid hidden. You can go to Extensions, Inkstitch, Params, and you want to add your zigzag underlay. Just select zigzag, as well as your contour underlay. And that's going to give it a lot more stability when it stitches onto the grid. So apply and quit. Unhide my grid. Select everything. Or I can just select off of it and it'll do everything. Command Shift L. Here's my grid, my auto-routed satin, and my final line. And then if I do jump stitches, you can see that there's a jump stitch from here to here. And I think this is the end of my grid, and then it's going to start this. So you can add a trim at the end of your grid to see if that gets rid of that. So let me do this. Command-Shift-P. I'm going to add a trim stitch after. Apply and quit. Select off. Command-Shift-L. And you can see our jump stitch is gone. So, looks good. Now we can do our realistic preview, Command-Shift, period. And there's our lace heart earring. So, you can save this and export your stitch file and put it on your machine, and we'll see how it stitches out. Okay, so make sure to wind your bobbin with your color of choice. I accidentally bought Ultra Solvy, so I had to put a little piece of Fabri-Solv on here to make it strong enough. I also did 2 layers of the Ultra Solvy, and this is what it looked like when it was stitching out. And as you can see, it's doing the underlay stitches underneath the satin stitch, and that's why I needed the extra layer of Fabri-Solv, because that's a lot of stitching. So you can see how I overlapped my hoopings so that I could fit both of the earrings on there, and then I just cut it out with scissors. And sometimes it kind of perforates and you can kind of tear it out of there, but with the Fabri-Solv that was not going to work. So I keep these smaller pieces to use in a smaller hoop. And I'm going to put these in some hot water, and I'm going to stir them around a little bit and let them sit for about 10 minutes. And then I rinse them off in cold water. You can see how dirty that hot water was. And then I flatten them out on a paper towel, but you don't want to dry them on a paper towel because the Solvy will stay sticky and it will stick to the paper. It's kind of hard to get out of there once it gets in there. So I use a microfiber towel and just kind of flatten it inside there and let it sit overnight. And then you can see that I have some of my mistake pieces in here. That one I didn't do the top loop to where it stitched towards the bottom, and then this one was without the grid. And these were my 2 final pieces, and they're very stiff, but there's some sort of strings and things around them, so you're gonna have to trim those to get rid of them. And I also use a lighter to kind of, but you don't want to do the lighter on your grid or it will burn a hole through there. So I use my scissors on the grid portion. And now I can attach my earring hoops just using a wire, and it takes just a couple of minutes to finish these up. And I trimmed a little piece that I saw off of there, and those are ready to go, ready to be worn.